All right, let's get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the MIT Mobility Forum, organized by the MIT Mobility Initiative. I'm Jinhua Zhao, Professor of Cities and Transportation at MIT. Today, we'll explore one of the most ambitious transportation initiatives in the American history, namely New York City's congestion pricing. With the introduction in January, New York City already set a precedent for how American cities can address the dual challenge of urban congestion and climate change. Even just 2 months on, it already started shaping the urban mobility pattern, reduce congestion, impacting city life, and with implication way beyond Manhattan or New York City there. The policy really marks a critical step towards creating a healthier, more equitable and sustainable urban environment. And of course, it receives many criticism, concerns, and a lot of even political challenges, right? I'm really delighted to share that today we have a really brilliant panel join us, really share with us the history, the current impact, and the future prospect. I will introduce the panel in a second, but for the moment, I want to describe how we'll run this session, right? We'll have 2 rounds. The first round will invite Sam, Will, Matt, each give a 7 minutes presentation. And the second round, I will invite a few people to give a commentary and also invite the panelists to respond to other panels' presentation. And the third part, John Monzati will curate the questions from the audience and pass to the panel orally in order to get a response, right? So for the audience, as we just warm up by introducing yourself in the chat, throughout the session, I would like to invite you to contribute one idea, be it a question to the panel or to a comment to the panel, right? So let's do a second question in the chat. I'd like people to name one congestion pricing program you're aware of, either implemented or proposed, right? The one congestion program you're aware of, right? To see the diversity of our audience. Yeah, look at the MTA, New York, London, Gothenburg, Singapore. Great, oh, thank you. Yeah, please do. All right, let me introduce the panel here. Sam is an American transportation engineer, formerly the New York City Traffic Commissioner and Chief Engineer in the Department of State, notably for popularizing the phrase gridlock, and I also get a nickname, Gridlock Sam. In a way, he's the godfather of New York City congestion pricing, right? Starting 50 years ago, trying to propose and really try to push this through. By knowing Sam, actually beyond being a government official, he's also an entrepreneur, have a very successful planning and consulting firm. He's a journalist, a writer for New York City's Daily News, Lower Manhattan's Downtown Express, as well as a scholar teaching at Hunter College. Actually was the inaugural Ted Keel Fellow of Roosevelt House at the Hunter College. Will Carey is the current Assistant Commissioner of Policy for New York City Department of State, Department of Transportation, right? Overseeing the DOT's policy unit. Carey supports the commissioner, the chief strategy officer, and the agency division around a range of issues, including Vision Zero, congestion pricing, which is today's topic, electric vehicle charging, innovation, economic analysis, among other portfolio of the Department of Transportation. In particular, the policy unit focused on opportunity and challenges posed by new mobility technologies and models, including autonomous vehicles, electric cars and trucks, shared mobility, and electric micro-mobility. Matt Daus is an American politician who served as the 10th commissioner and chairman of the New York City TLC, the Taxi and the Limousine Commission. He's now a partner and chair of transportation at the law firm Windels and Marx. He also serves as the president of the International Association of Transportation Regulators, right? I really cannot expect a better panel than this one to share with us the experience and history and future prospect of the New York congestion pricing program. Now, let me invite Sam to start the conversation with us. Project the slides here. Sam, off you.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much, Jinhua, for the introduction, and it's a pleasure to be here, and I will be speaking fast, so I try to get it in 7 minutes. I have 12:07. I call this a drama, and this is a drama. It involves the actors include the President of the United States, 2 governors, a cabinet secretary, numerous elected officials, and 20+ million people that live in the tri-state region. Next slide, please. And it is a drama that's unfolding almost immediately. Trump set today as the deadline for congestion pricing, and the governor responded, "We will not be steamrolled next." And you could feel the tension in this. And then all of a sudden, 20 hours ago, next, the deadline was extended for 30 days. So this drama will continue to unfold, and I am fairly optimistic that the city will prevail, but the Trump administration will likely exact a very high price in terms of federal funds. But we still don't know how this drama will turn out, so stay tuned. Next. This is the zone. If you look at the map to the left, there are two zones there. The first zone from 96th Street South was aimed at for-hire vehicles, and a charge went into effect in 2019. And south of 60th Street, that's the congestion zone for all vehicles that went into effect January 5th. Now, I show you the date of June 5th because the governor actually changed the plan at the last minute. This was supposed to go in June 30th. The next slide will show you how she changed it. And you could see she lowered the costs by 40%. So she waited until after the election. People all saw this as an election ploy there were 3 or 4 toss-ups in the New York race. The governor was not terribly successful. She lowered the prices, and she also eliminated, if you look at the very bottom of this, the surge pricing on gridlock alert days that I was very sorry to see go. Next. And these are just the differences. We'll move on to the next slide. So almost immediately, the rhetoric sounded like the sky was falling in New York. One of our major tabloids, the New York Post, talked about it be devastating. It will kill people. It's a pothole. It is the economy will fall apart. The transport workers union that will benefit said everybody should be angry. There were 9 or 10 lawsuits were immediately filed, and more than 100 groups asked for exemptions, including the TWU, the union boss, asked for exemptions. The next slide, please. And you can see this is the gestation process, and we got this from Goodwin, and I'm not sure, I think that comes from Europe and maybe from the Stockholm area, but we followed this to a T. There was increasing support for a general idea. There was enough support to go ahead. Then a near panic, the panic ensued. And I show you are here. There is now a buildup of support as the benefits started to appear. The next slide, please. And that we follow 2 tenets, at least that's what I put together for congestion pricing. You must have serious congestion, and you must have good transit. The Manhattan Central Business District, which is the map to your left, Central Park is shown in green. It's essentially the entire area south of Central Park. There are 200 transit options. There are 53 rail options, 32 subway entrances, 93 MTA bus options. There are 34 New Jersey options, 15 Amtrak lines, and 10 ferry routes. So this is as rich as you can get for a transit area. And it also, in the next slide, will show you the speeds have dropped. And you'll see the speed decline throughout the decade of 2010, 2019. I attribute it largely to the growth of 2 industries.
Are you gonna
the for-hire vehicles, the Ubers and the Lyfts. I know Matt may disagree with me on that, and also the deliveries that we had. We could see in 2020 a huge jump in speeds, and they declined to 7 miles an hour in the Central Business District, 4.6 in Midtown. Next. And these are some of the early results. I know will go over that, but car traffic is down, subway ridership is up, crashes are down, kids getting to school on time, getting to hospital faster, retail zones, sales are up, restaurants, Broadway are all up. And the majority say Trump should allow it to continue. Next. And I just want to show this, that due to the pandemic, more people are driving. The motor vehicle share to that rich central business district went from 24 to 28%, and that's quite significant. Next. And this is just the end, some of the headlines, the whack-a-toll, and more headlines in the next slide. And Trump actually wrote, congestion pricing is dead, and all of New York is saved. Long live the king. So I'll end it here. This is a drama that we will watch unfolding certainly within the next few weeks.
Thank you so much, Sam. Now I invite Will Carey to continue the conversation with us. So here's the slides here. Let me see if
Thank you so much, Jinhua. It's great to be here, particularly as a graduate of Course 11, to be back joining an MTA forum. And thank you, Sam, for packing so much history into 7 minutes. I'm going to take on this story and talk a little bit about the results that we have seen from congestion pricing since it went into effect in January. Next slide, please. You know, I'm from the New York City Department of Transportation. We're the agency that oversees the 6,000 miles of streets in New York City. The program is actually being operated by the Metropolitan Transit Authority, or MTA. That's the entity that manages the transit system and also oversees the tolled bridges and tunnels in the 5 boroughs. Since the MTA turned the system on in January 5th, and I'm going to admit here, I'm cribbing some of these slides. I'm cribbing from my MTA colleagues. There have been 2.8 fewer vehicles entering the central business district. And overall, it's been about a 10% reduction in traffic entering the zone every day. That's about 60,000 fewer cars. You know, I think our perspective is this is quite a good result, especially given that, as Sam mentioned, the tolls were substantially reduced by 40% from what they were originally intended to be. So for those of you who may not be familiar with the Manhattan Central Business District, you know, Manhattan is an island. Many of the crossings into the zone, to the CBD, are already tolled. And so in some ways, we kind of had sort of partial congestion pricing already. What this program has done has really kind of completed it and made sure that traffic coming in from all entry points is paying. And given Manhattan as an island and given those limited entry points, the places where we're seeing the greatest improvements in speed are, not unsurprisingly, where those bridges and tunnels touch down. So this is a table here. It's drawn from a mix of data sources through sort of a regional traffic management system called Transcom. But what we're seeing is rather dramatic improvements in reductions in travel times for the main spans coming in from New Jersey, the bridges and tunnels coming in from Brooklyn, and the major bridge crossings and tunnel crossings coming in from Queens, upwards of 10, sometimes 20, sometimes 30%. Really dramatic improvements in travel times for people using those crossings. Next slide, please. We also, my agency has access to data that is generated by every yellow taxi, every for-hire vehicle. That's what we call Uber and Lyfts in New York City. And all those vehicles are generating GPS tracks. And we're able to harvest that data to look at overall speeds at the zonal level. So like what's going on within the CBD. And what we're finding is that speeds are uniformly higher, about 7% higher during the weekday peak hours of 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. and even higher still, about 10% higher during the noon to 10 p.m. period on weekends. We're seeing the biggest speed improvements during the midday and during the evening, less speed improvements in the morning. It should be noted that speeds are already typically higher during the AM peak. As the critical mass of vehicles grows in Manhattan over the course of the day, the speeds tend to drop. It's also important to point out, and Sam made this point when he showed the chart, not only are speeds up, but we were in a period where year over year, the trend had been negative. Basically, speeds obviously dramatically improved in 2020 in the wake of the pandemic, but every year since then, they've been coming down. So the benefit is not just the 7% approval, it's that we're diverging from that secular trend that probably would have seen another couple percentage point deterioration in the speed situation in the core. Next slide, please. Another interesting set of data that the system has unlocked for us is the ability actually to really see every day what the mix of vehicles are that are entering New York City. And I think New York is unique in the really high proportion of vehicles that are taxis and for hire vehicles. Against those are Ubers and Lyfts, in addition to the 57% that are personal cars. And although people tend to think of trucks causing a lot of congestion, they actually make up a relatively small proportion of the traffic in the core. Next slide, please. Some interesting data points. The peak toll rates are in effect from 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. And what this slide is showing here is you're seeing a little bit of an increase in folks who are trying to get up real early to get into the zone before 5 a.m. and not pay the peak rate. I think that's evidence that the price signal is working. You can also see that on the back end. Some people are waiting until 9 p.m. To enter the zone. And again, that's part of what we want to see here is that shift in time because we want people to use the network when there's less demand on it. Next slide, please. So just ending with a photograph. The first slide of my presentation really showed some classic Manhattan congestion. This is a street not far from my office in Lower Manhattan, and just a visual comparison between what it looked like in October with this massive traffic jam leading to the West Side Highway and to the Hugh Carey Tunnel, and then much smoother sailing and free-flowing traffic with congestion pricing in January. Thank you, and I look forward to the rest of the discussion.
Great, thank you so much, Will. And now I pass to Matt.
Sure, I can share my screen.
Sure.
Okay, great. It might be, to finish within 7 minutes, I'll have to control these slides. Okay, let me see if I could. Can we see it?
Yeah.
Great. Well, first of all, I want to thank Xinhua and MIT for hosting us. I've been attending these forums for years now. I think there's some of the best out there. So keep doing what you're doing at MIT. Great substance. It goes from policy to the technical. I can't thank you guys enough. And I want to also just mention, it's great to be with Will and Commissioner Rodriguez and Will and the whole team at DOT are doing a great job. And Sam and I go way back. We tag team and go to teach at each other's universities. We're both part of the CUNY system. We actually are having a webinar for those of you who are interested next Tuesday at 10 o'clock with some folks from London. Darius and Steve to talk about the London experience. And I want to also thank Camille Kamga and Jerry Hay from UTRC because they helped publish some of my reports on this topic. And I also want to thank my staff because they've been monitoring this stuff closely. Ben Listman and Juan Martinez, who used to be the general counsel of Transportation Alternatives, work with me in my firm. They've been very helpful in monitoring this stuff. And I'm going to put on my legal hat, my former government hat. It's a little bit biased, as Sam mentions. I have a special place in my heart for, for the taxis. Sam used to be a taxi driver himself, so I think he lets me pontificate about these issues in this class. I'm going to try to give you guys and gals a different perspective on some of these issues, because I have the lawyer hat, I have the academic hat, and we've been in court and been monitoring the legal cases, and I'm happy to answer questions about that as well. We've been monitoring it very closely. I've been in court. Who knows what's going to happen to the cases? My former supervisor and friend Randy Mastro has now been appointed first deputy mayor, so I guess the litigation could die on the vine in New Jersey, where he's representing the governor. But I just wanted to give people a little bit of history before I jump into some new data that I have that is even more fresh on the taxi side than what TLC and will have. This thing has been going on for a long time. And, there's just been different types of drama. I agree with Sam, it's a lot of drama, but it all started with Bloomberg. Politically, we weren't ready for it. I mean, they did everything they could. And my former supervisor, Dan Doctoroff, when I was there, I worked on Plan YC. It came from Plan YC. It failed at the last second, but there was a fight, and we did everything we could to get this thing going until Jeanette Sada-Khan joined us, and we went in a different direction. But during this particular period of time, everything was done right except the politics. And for those of you who might remember Shelley Silver, who was he's passed away, he went to jail. He was the person who not only held up, putting a stadium on the West Side, which actually was a good thing because I don't know how the hell that would have worked for the Olympics, but he basically single-handedly killed congestion pricing the first time. And it was purely political then, and it's purely political now. And, the legislative fallout that happened led to other financing solutions which have brought us to this. And I wanted to point out things we haven't discussed, which is, the participation of the FHB in the taxi industry in helping the MTA. Back when Patterson was the governor and Richard Ravitz was, trying to figure things out and dealing with, some service cut issues and MTA finances, this has been an ongoing thing. When the bus system was created and the MTA was created, the goal back in history was to have it be self-sustaining. And I think we all know now that it can't be self-sustaining. It needs to be subsidized. I fell off my chair when, people were looking to put a 50-cent charge on the yellow cabs. We're going back to 2009 when I was at TLC. I found it to be an interesting concept. The industry was very upset about it. Why are we subsidizing our competition? It was like an us versus them thing. And I don't think it needs to be that way. I think it's really an ecosystem, but this charge has been on since 2009. It raised over $1 billion. That's just on the yellow cabs. I don't think, Sam, you get enough credit for this. Honestly, I think it's faded into the background. We would not be where we are today if it wasn't for Sam. So I want to pat Sam on the back. He's looking to get rid of his moniker. If we solve congestion, I don't know what's going to happen to Gridlock Sam. We're going to have to get you another title. But Sam really, with huge articles in the Times, really got this thing going with Move New York and Alex. And I remember him and Charlie Komanoff coming to my classes with all these spreadsheets and getting me on board early with it. And I'm a supporter of congestion pricing. I think it's great. However, I think, how you serve it on the table, whether you chop it up or where you put it, is it a side dish? What other things are you eating? I think that's really an important part of what I want to talk about today. But Move New York is the movement that created and got us to where we are. It coincided, of course, with the Summer of Hell under Andrew Cuomo. And whether you like or don't like Andrew Cuomo, I mean, I think he actually took a bold move in pushing this forward. Now he's against it, but at the time, there was politics then, politics now. But in the interim, when they couldn't get it done initially, they went to the FHV and the taxi industry first to try to almost like pilot this in 2019. So we've had sort of a congestion charge in addition to the surcharge for 50 cents on the taxi cabs, since 2019, and $2 billion has been brought in. Some of the money's gone to the Subway Action Plan and the Outer Borough Transportation Account, but we've been contributing for years. So you can understand, like, coming out of the pandemic with some of the problems that we've had in the taxi and FHV industry, which are still recovering, that there was a lot of opposition to this. In fact, I want to thank the MTA for actually listening, because my university put this report out, which you can find on our website, on the importance of exempting taxis and FHVs. I still believe they should be exempt. They are part of the transportation ecosystem. And passengers really have paid enough. I mean, I hate to say it, but they've become a bit of an ATM machine for the MTA. And I think that we need to look at other sources of revenue, whether it be gambling or whatnot. But we raised double taxation, economic hardship for drivers and passengers. And this is when Sam mentioned earlier that the charges were like being proposed were like preposterous. Highways had like a $14 to a $16 charge. So you add that to everything else, it's like $20 for sitting in a cab for the first time without even moving. So I'm glad the MTA actually read this report and listened to testimony and got the numbers down with the governor. Of all days, to hold our workshop that I planned with TRB on congestion pricing, it actually fell on the day that it was being implemented. So there was a lot of fanfare. Kristen White, who was the head of highways, actually gave a keynote speech. And I think the big takeaways from the different cities that we had, London, Stockholm, Madrid, is that it's a political issue, and it's a marketing and a PR message. And I think we got it wrong. We should not be calling it congestion pricing. I think this was something we should have called it Move New York or something like that, Sam. I mean, I think the politics are so important here. I actually think that the MTA would be have a good expenditure of money to hire a campaign manager. This is a political campaign. It's become so political. You really need to focus on the politics of things. And that was a big takeaway. And also the other takeaway that we had, was that, look, this is not going to solve all the problems. It's not one size fits all. The ITR has put out reports saying to the best principles for congestion mitigation. It's not just congestion pricing. You need other policies to go with it. And we need to also talk about, and I'm sure this is on Will's mind and Commissioner Rodriguez's mind, is what happens in the zone. What other policies are you going to do to keep things moving in the zone? Double parking and enforcement, automated enforcement. It's a complicated issue, and I'm not a traffic engineer. I'm just a lawyer. So Sam and others understand this better than I. But looking at this from 10 steps away, it's political, it's PR driven, and there needs to be other policies supporting it. And we have to message it that it's not going to create a situation where there's no cars on the street. If you look at the other cities around the world that have done this, London and Stockholm, it's kind of where we're going right now. It's like an 8, 10, 15% drop. And we don't also want people and speeds to go up too much, because that creates Vision Zero issues. Are there taxi and FHV exemptions in other cities? There was for a while in London. Now they have an ultra low emission zone. Singapore and Stockholm didn't do it. So it depends how you slice it. If you look at some of the raw data that we've come up with, I actually have some interesting data that we got from Curb, and I want to thank Amos Tamam and Curb for giving us this. TLC doesn't have it yet, but it's similar to what Will and Sam had reported on. Yellow taxi trips in particular to the CBD, from outside the CBD, increased 32%. Travel times increased about about 5%. Taxi trips from the CBD to elsewhere increased 30%. Travel times decreased 3%. Taxi trips wholly within the CBD increased 40%. That's huge. Travel time decreased 3%. And yellow taxi trips wholly outside the CBD increased 31%. Now, we don't have all the data from Uber and Lyft yet, but Preliminary data through February from the TLC shows that their ridership is actually down 3 to 4%, which is actually not that big of a deal because there's honestly other issues going on here. There's a cap, there's utilization rates, and people being thrown off the platform to comply with the TLC rules. So there's other issues at play there. But this is actually a good thing. This is what we thought would happen when Sam and Charlie Kalmanoff would come to my class and talk about this stuff. We thought it would help the taxi industry, and it is helping them so far. The lawsuits, I don't think they're winners. My predictions are that, all of the lawsuits are probably going to be decided in favor of the MTA. I've been in court. I've looked at the papers. And I think that's because of the environmental laws. I mean, the way the environmental laws are structured is, the most you can ever get is a Pyrrhic victory. If you didn't do an EIS, you go back and you do it the correct way. These are all lawsuits which are not slam dunks. I think the MTA has the upper hand. And in fact, Lee Zeldin pulling the authority from highways, I think MTA is going to win that lawsuit as well. I think ultimately this is going to be a congressional issue. And the future of the program is going to depend upon, I think, whether Trump wants to cut a deal with Hochul on other stuff that he wants. If you look at the narrative that Sam was mentioning, there's other things being discussed. The pipeline from upstate New York. He's talking about crime in the subways. There's going to be a cooperation with ICE. I think there could be the art of the deal. I thought maybe he was going to kill it completely, but I think that the governor is really working on him. And if she's savvy enough to pull this off, we may have some type of deal here that saves congestion pricing. The problem, I think, here is that there's a bipartisan coalition with Josh Gottheimer and Nicole Malliotakis. So they have the votes in Congress this time to get the bill passed. The big issue is whether the Speaker of the House is going to be able to, and this president, have other priorities and other problems. Is it going to go into the big, beautiful bill? I don't know. There's just so much uncertainty about that. So legally, if they pass this law, it's dead forever. And the lawsuits are moot. It doesn't matter what highways approval is being pulled or who's suing. Congress has the authority to pass a law, and they now have Republicans in both houses to do that. And if they do that, it's dead for good. We even looked legally, and I do believe there's going to be a deal here. So let's see what happens. Some advice to the MTA and to the governor. And this is a personal opinion. I've lived through summers of hell, service cuts. It's not a good narrative in this day and age, especially with the election results that we saw nationally. It's not a good narrative to say, you know what, I have no money, I'm going to cut service, I need more money. The MTA really needs to take a look at their spending and at least make an effort to try to reduce unnecessary expenditures and waste and so forth. If they don't do this, it's going to be hard to have this conversation with the public, hard to have this conversation and this narrative with the new administration and the federal government and Congress, right? I mean, there's like some things that, I'm glad that they pulled that $1 million contract to study the psychology about why people, jump the turnstile. It's a legitimate issue to criticize the MTA, even though they're making strides on safety and security and also on fare beating. And recently, Jano's actually done some good on this lately, but they should have done it a long time ago because most of the money that is asked to be raised by congestion pricing can be made up by just enforcing the law and getting people to pay their fares. So I think that's my advice to them. And I really think, I also thought and researched whether the state or the city can do it on their own without the help of the feds. And the answer is no. The problem is that there are longstanding federal laws on the books that if any federal funding was used for any of the streets, and Will and Sam would know this better than anybody, there are streets that have been paved by federal dollars. And how can we possibly do congestion pricing if we have to cut off Fifth Avenue or other roads within the central business district? So that's not a winner. They're going to have to deal with Congress and Trump, and there's no way around it. So I'm hoping they're going to cut a deal. And I will just end on this. I'll say that, from a policy perspective, politics is the beginning and the end of all of this. And I do believe that there's a solution here. But I do believe we just need to figure out a way to thread the needle with the administration because they're holding all the cards right now. You know, and it's a good thing, but I do believe that we should be the big mistake that was made here in retrospect is the state legislature in New York putting a price tag on it. That really tied Jano's hands at the MTA big time. To have $1 billion a year caused the exemptions that were being talked about to not even be a discussion. You know, there was the Partnership for New York was so intent on making sure that payroll taxes are not increased, and it's actually probably going to happen anyway now after all of that. But buses were not exempt. And the bus industry, it's kind of outrageous that the private bus industry had to fight for an exemption. And, you know, at the end of the day, the Mobility Board and Jano were pretty clear on this, along with Paul Weisbrod, who chaired the panel. Like, we have to get to that number, and it's like a Rubik's Cube. Like, every time you give an exemption, everyone's going to be charged more. So I think if other cities are thinking about doing this in the future, they should not put a dollar figure on it. And it should be about metrics to reduce congestion and trying to get there and start slowly and pick the amount that's going to discourage people from coming in more than anything else, and exempt taxis, exempt FHVs, exempt buses, have HOV lanes, exempt EVs. There's a lot of different things that we could have done to, you know, to put the environment first and have the money be second. And I'll end on this. Safety is critical. Like Duffy wrote that letter, the Secretary of Transportation, to the MTA. It is a legitimate issue. People don't feel safe on the subway. You know, and Sustainable Transportation 101, I've been teaching that course for 10 years. You can't legitimately tell people to get out of their cars if you don't have a public transit system that's safe, affordable, and works on time. We need to really fix that first before we can really push people to get out of their cars. So I probably went over, so my apologies. That's why I'll shut up.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. Yeah, so there are three prominent scholars, practitioners, entrepreneurs in the audience. So I invite them to each give a short remark. Just try to do like a 1 minute or so each. Robin Chase, Michael Replica, and Professor Kai Oxhausen. Robin, go ahead.
Hi, I'm delighted to be asked, and I loved hearing what you had to say. I've thought about this and worked with you guys for a long time. What I think are key points is that the world is watching this. And I think about what London did, and they made all these metrics. They had all these metrics, and then they would do these monthly, almost in real time, dynamically showing what the actuality of that metric was, so people could see it and see the improvements. When I think about what you've been discussing, we do know that transportation system is a bundle of services, and I'm with you, Matt, that I've been really anti all of the taxes that have been applied to vehicles for hire. And was interesting to me, the comment that you said, oh, we got to see now what fraction are cars and what fraction are taxis as they come into the city. And if we think about what is it that we want to have happen in the city, when we bring in a personal car, it's going to have to be parked. And we want people to be coming other ways and not having to park that vehicle, which for me, what I love about congestion pricing is it's actually finally taxing personal cars, which should be thinking twice. And so when we talk about who should be getting exemptions and who not, I'd like us to think about what is it we want to have happen? What are the goals we want to have happen in the city in terms of speed, safety, mode share, and then looking at all those vehicle types, who is contributing and not contributing to those goals? So obviously buses should not be paying if that is one of our goals. And I want to say, should this get through the politics, which I'm hoping it does, it would be really interesting to take a look at delivery trucks and the double parking. In London, that's been the huge bane of their life. And when I think about retail and the demise of retail because of delivery, it'd be really interesting to be able to look at Manhattan and say, okay, now we have this thing called congestion pricing, and exemptions or not exemptions. What do we want to do about delivery trucks, and which kind of delivery trucks? It would be just in that mix of what is it that we want. Hi, Michael.
Thank you, Robin. Michael.
Yeah, I'm former deputy commissioner for policy at the New York City Department of Transportation. Greetings to all the speakers, Will, who used to be part of my team. You know, I think this is a wonderful forum. I think New York's experience to date with congestion pricing shows that it works, that it shows and produces dramatic benefits that are quite widespread. And I do agree with Matt that all of the agencies involved and stakeholders need to do a better job rapidly of conveying to the public and the media and elected officials what those benefits are. In particularly highlighting the benefits for safety and air quality, which I think have they've certainly been there, but they've been underplayed to the revenue side of the picture, in part because of the way the legislation was structured, setting up congestion pricing. I think there's an important opportunity in the New York region to build additional legs of support for congestion pricing by incorporating it as an air quality transportation control measure under the Clean Air Act, which gives authority independent of U.S. Department of Transportation for state and local actions to be implemented in ways that are basically to satisfy requirements under the Clean Air Act for providing protection of health under the National Ambient Air Quality Standards. And, the people who live in the New York metropolitan area continue to suffer air quality that doesn't meet those federal air quality standards. I don't think we're going to see the Clean Air Act repealed, even by this radical new fascist administration. And so I think we have opportunities here to try to develop additional support for congestion pricing in that way. I would agree with Matt and some of the other speakers. I think the MTA is likely to prevail in the litigation that it's engaged in right now about doing this. And the big battle will be over politics and over efforts by the federal government to deauthorize in Congress and to try and withhold funding from New York illegally, and how the state negotiates pushback against those actions legally. So I think it's going to be a continued drama and a continued big fight, and it's an important fight that we have and that we win.
Great. Thank you, Michael. Kai.
Okay, thanks. Very interesting talks. Very interesting that New York is so late to the game, because Manhattan's speeds should have asked for congestion pricing for what, 30, 40 years? Anyway, they're now there. I think what I would argue is that all of these schemes have to have a clearly stated objective, what they want to reach. They should have a clear way of using the money, not in the underground, but using it visibly for everybody. Remember, in London, they funded new buses, sped up the bus lines, did things like that. Clearly visible change. I think that's crucial for the success. And then the measurement of the whatever KPI or whatever objective you have should be understood naively. So don't do something fancy with lots of adjustments, but use a clear and easy to communicate objective. And that's really the way forward. Now, having listened to everybody, I would argue that there shouldn't be any exemptions. There's no reason why the externality is a good one if it's produced by a bus, or it's a good one when it's produced by a taxi. It's still the externality for everyone. And then if there's problems, you solve it with a different mechanism, but not with a whole lot of exemptions, which only make it hard to enforce, hard to communicate, creates lots of envy. No, just charge everybody and be done with it and stick out the conflicts later.
Thank you,
Can I respond to that? Can I respond quickly to
very quickly. Okay, 20 seconds. Okay.
20 seconds. I would love to do what you're saying. And in order to do that, I think we need to charge congestion per square meter with a human in it. And if you have a human in your square meter, then you are exempt. Otherwise, you're paying 10 square meters for my giant SUV, and a bus would pay effectively nothing. We can move on.
Cool. Yeah.
Would be one way.
Thanks, Kai, Robin, and Michael for the commentary there. So I'll add 3 questions, remarks to the panel, and give panel each 2 minutes to conclude today's discussion, and then give John still some chance for the audience to respond. The first one is, Sam, when we met, right, we talked about today's drama, but you told me in the 70s, it was just as dramatic there, right? Give us a little bit of the story there. And also particularly you said you work with Professor William Vickery, who really started this theoretical foundation in the 1950s from Columbia University. So let's know, between his ideal and today's implementation, do you see a big gap, or we are very much implement the ideal? And also, while this year it was implemented, do you see any surprises, or you see this most as expected what happens, right? That's for Sam. For Will, congestion charging, as we understand, receive a lot of criticism, right, for a variety of reasons. Among those criticism, do you see any of them being valid? Meaning that the congestion pricing as it is indeed can be improved. What are those areas that we can indeed absorb those criticism, constructive criticism, and improve? And then for Matt, New York City created the precedent in the United States. Where do you see other cities may follow? Yeah, I know any advice to Chicago, San Francisco, any other city may contemplate this congestion pricing regime here. Yeah, Sam, we'll let you start.
Yeah, thank you, Jim, and thank you to the others for all the very valuable input. Yes, you're right, Jim. Back in the 1970s, I began working on congestion pricing, and William Vickery was often at my meetings pushing me to push congestion pricing. Mike Replogle mentioned the Clean Air Act in 1973. We proposed tolls on the Eastern Harlem River bridges. Effectively, there would be a charge to enter Manhattan from all locations, and reminiscent of what we're going through today, there was, in fact, an act of Congress that stopped that. 2 New York legislators, the Senator Moynihan and Elizabeth Holtzman, passed a rule that blocked the city from implementing congestion pricing. We tried again in 1980 on a mini version of it, and we were sued promptly by the Automobile Club and the Garage Board of Trade. We lost. Matt explained what happened in 2007, 2008. It was Governor Cuomo, after the summer of hell, where he politically saw it advantageous to raise $1 billion a year, $15 billion in capital money for the MTA. And so the goal was clearly stated to raise $1 billion for transit. And lots of us felt that that might not be the right approach. As far as surprises, I think what Matt showed on taxis, yeah, that's a surprise that they're getting more trips. I'm happy being an old cab driver, or having driven a cab many, many decades ago. Also very surprised at the results of the Holland and the Lincoln tunnels coming from New Jersey. Really wonderful to see. Also, the number of crashes exceeds the reduction in vehicle miles traveled. And I think that's a really good sign. So overall, I'm surprised by how well it worked. Saying that, there's a lot to be improved on in this plan.
Thank you, Sam. So Will.
So I think some of the most common criticisms against the program, and Sam touched on some of this in his response, was that it was just about revenue, it was a money grab, and that it wouldn't actually provide tangible benefits. I think the data that I provided show a clear counterpoint to that. The drivers who are paying are getting value for that money. And I tried to put it in the chat. I don't know if I was successful, but there was recent public polling done around this issue. And some of the largest increases in support for the program are among those who drive into the zone several times a week, because they are actually seeing, tangible benefits. I think some of the other concerns that were raised about the program, again, for those of you sort of not so familiar with the Manhattan or New York City geography, obviously Manhattan's an island. New York City is sort of in a cluster of boroughs. surrounded by water, and there is traffic that goes through the zone that is coming from New Jersey and points west to Long Island and points east. And what would happen to some of the vast majority of the vehicles going to the zone, by the way, that is their destination, but there is some traffic that is through traffic. And what would be the diversionary effect of the program, with particular concern on environmental justice communities in the Bronx? That is something that I think it's too early to say definitively whether or not it is happening. There is a robust program of like $100 million in environmental mitigations as part of this program. But certainly the preliminary data that we have seen is not indicative of a large increase in traffic, particularly in truck traffic on those routes that either go to the north or the south of the zone. But it is something that the MTA, and we are working with them, have committed to monitor, as well as the air quality impacts of the program. Nice.
Thank you, Will. Matt?
Yeah, thanks, Xinhua. Great commentary. First of all, just going back into history, and Sam knows this better than me. It's so hard to remove a toll. I've seen it is and it isn't. Like I rarely see tolls once they're there go away. They usually go up. I can only think of two historical examples, which I think probably got folks a lot of votes. Mayor Gaynor in 1911 removed the tolls from the East River bridges, and before we had congestion pricing, I remember Sam and Mayor Bloomberg and others were looking into actually doing that with Mark Shaw before going into full-blown congestion pricing. And Rudy Giuliani, yes, the famous Rudy Giuliani, removed the Staten Island ferry toll to thank Staten Island for voting for him, and he said that publicly. So other than those unique examples, it just doesn't happen, right? So, but I respectfully disagree with some of the comments Kai is making. I think, I kind of agree with you, Robin, and we need to envision what we want to get out of the system in the future. If we ever want to have a chance at mobility as a service, and we want to have an ecosystem, which is the clear intent of the FTA and the Mobility on Demand Sandbox program, it's working. We're using taxis that are wheelchair accessible and Ubers and Lyfts for first and last mile partnerships that have worked. The FTA needs to pull the trigger on giving money to transit agencies, because the history of public transit is that they're siloed. They don't understand taxis, they don't want to understand them, and they're not part of our system. It's not efficient to have multi-passenger accessorized vehicles that are inefficient picking up multiple passengers, or buses and more rail that's not being used at off-peak hours. Mobility is dynamic. And I think one of the things that these cities all over the country, small cities that have experimented with making taxis and FHVs part of the public transit system, subsidizing them, having mobility hubs, that's the future. If we ever want to have, like they have they don't really have it anywhere in the world that's full blown, but Vienna and where I'm going to actually Saturday, and Helsinki, the experiments with mobility as a service, which is the future, having one app on your phone for public and private transit, is built upon taxis being part of the system. So exempting them and also buses that are private makes perfect sense to me. And raise the tolls on the private vehicles and keep them out. I think the visioning is important. And I think other cities, what advice do I have? San Francisco, Chicago, DC, everybody's talking about it. Everybody is living and dying by what happens in New York City. So there's not much advice I can give other than what I gave so far. I think the messaging needs to be different. You need to make a narrative that this is going to help people. It's going to help the environment. It's not backed into a dollar figure that causes people to view this as a tax. You call it something different than congestion pricing, and you look at your agencies right now and you try to make them safer, and you try to at least explore cutting out waste. If you want to have any chance of negotiating with this Congress and the Trump administration, whether you like them or don't like them, the political reality is you need a different narrative. But do I think Chicago and California will be doing themselves any favors by sticking their neck out and starting to discuss this? No. I think they should wait to see how the governor works out a deal with Trump, if there is a deal, and to get lessons learned from that and everything else we discussed today, and then retool it. But if I was them, I would stand down You know, I think a big problem that the Democrats are having right now is they need to pick their battles. This is a battle worth fighting, but now's not the time. Let the governor of New York see, we got to see which direction Trump is going in. He usually is pretty easy to read. He says what he means, right? What I found interesting is that there's a lot of talk going on here, and he has taken a hard line, but not as hard as he has with other stuff. So I think there's an opening here, and I don't know what that deal is going to look like, but I would say to these other cities, let's wait for that deal if there is one, or no deal, and then you could figure out what your plan is now. Don't jump on the bandwagon and start like announcing you're doing it like tomorrow. I think that will make the administration angry, and it will lead to like the whole thing in New York being jettisoned.
Thank you. Yeah, we're running a little bit longer. We have almost 400 people today. I do want to give some time. So John, how about let's run it to 1:05? At least sometime we can get to the chance to hear the audience questions. Yeah, John, please.
Sure. Okay. This is a nearly impossible task, but one of the common threads throughout the audience was the issue of equity. And I would like to just touch on, like a specific example. So plumbers, electricians heading into lower Manhattan. Somebody in the chat raised the issue of teachers. Do you all have any sort of specific reactions to that? That, this is really sort of preventing these folks who need to have access, who might have a van full of tools or what have you, to get to where they need to go.
Yeah, John, if I could just jump in on that one. This is covered in my report at the UTRC, utrc2.org. If you look there, you can get it. One of the recommendations we have there, and the ITR has this, the International Association of Transport Regulators, we have a report called Congestion Mitigation Principles. That and my report both recommend a lockbox. And that lockbox be every passenger that is paying money as a congestion charge to taxis and FHV should go back to the industry through a mobility hub lockbox where we subsidize trips for the last mile for teachers, for people who are of low income. So rather than exempt people from coming in with income inequality, I think it's better to drive people into the system and to have them go take an Uber at no charge from their home to the train station and have the money from the passengers that go and earmark it for that. And I think you could then work the exemptions for teachers and people with disabilities that way, instead of, like Kai was mentioning, giving too many exemptions to everybody, because I think that is insane.
And just quickly, Sam, Will, does that resonate with you?
Not, I think it's a great idea and I'll take a look at it, but I'm not for any exemptions whatsoever. In terms of equity, the Community Service Society, which represents low-income New Yorkers, looked at the issue and considering how low-income New Yorkers get to their jobs, they don't drive to their jobs. There's a 50-to-1 ratio at least in terms of the benefits, since the money goes into transit, and it is a lockbox because it is bonded money. It can't be spent on anything else other than capital programs. So I think the equity issue in New York City, at least, is New York City's already made some strides in the equity, half fares there for people in the zone that make 60,000 or less, and also for people outside in the boroughs that fall below an income. They don't have to pay for 30 days straight or 20 days straight. They get a break on after the first 10.
And John, I'll just add one more thing quickly. The example of service vehicles or delivery trucks coming in, time is money for those companies. And if those delivery vehicles or service vehicles are able to spend less time getting to the place where they need to do their work, there's a return there. And so I do think there needs to be more quantitative research on what the cost benefit is. Again, people are getting value in return for that payment, and that should be part of the calculus when we look at the impact on trucks, on delivery companies, and on service companies.
Super. I think we're at time, Jinhua.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Good. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
please.
I just saw this come up a lot in the chat, and I just want to touch on it. The issue of speed and safety, because I did talk about increases in speed. I want to make sure that people understand what I mean. In free flow, so like during the height of the pandemic, the average speed in the Manhattan core is 16 miles an hour. So that includes the time that you have to spend stopped at red lights. And during congested periods, we're talking about speeds, average speeds in the range of 6 to 7 miles per hour. So do we generally have concerns about speed? Yes, in a safety context. That I think in this context, we do not. What we're talking about is blocks that are not backed up, that are intersections that are not gridlocked, and a network that is functioning effectively. And I think the data bears that out. We are seeing decreases in crashes with injuries on the order of 20% in the zone so far this year. And in fact, citywide, and I'm knocking on all available pieces of wood that are near me, we are having our best year in terms of fatal crashes since 2013.
Yeah, and I think automated enforcement could really help out big time. You know, the cameras on the buses, and you know that will, I think, bring calm if things get really successful and we have people speeding like we did during the pandemic. And I respectfully disagree with you, Sam. I usually agree with you, but I just think that some of the money should not be for capital programs. I think it should be part of on-demand mobility. I really think that that's one of the things that's a mistake here. That you know, some of it, and that's why I suggested the lockbox for that, because it kind of makes sense, and the industry would support it if they knew it was coming back to them. Like Uber and Lyft and taxis may actually have a fighting chance to support increases in their passenger surcharges if they knew that they were getting more business out of it. And this is a real issue of equity. You know, people, the nurse that's living in Coney Island, you know, on the graveyard shift, you would rather take an Uber and pay 3 or 4 times the amount. If that trip could be subsidized for the last mile to go to transit, you're going to drive people into transit, and it's a worthwhile subsidy, in my opinion. And that's where I differ on this. I think there should be several lockboxes, but one that's kind of like siloed for the for-hire industry.
We'll continue the discussion.
Yeah, Sam, maybe I give you the last word to not just to that question, but broadly, where do you hope to see for the congestion pricing to evolve in New York City and also in the country broadly?
Yeah, I think it's important for the country, because if New York City, if you can't do it here, and that's the title of our presentation, you won't be able to do it anywhere else in the country. Europe is way ahead of us, Asia does it, and other places. This is an incredibly imperfect plan, but we need to get over this threshold. It's implemented. The benefits are beyond what I expected, but we need to look more to what the Move New York plan was about, and that it was more equity to the people that are also paying out of their pockets. A quarter of the revenue would also go to roads and bridges as well, so they would get something for it. I appreciate the comment that in London, you saw very visible improvements with the additional buses. We need more visible improvements as well. So I think we have to get through this hurdle, the politics of it, and then working together with Matt and with Will and with others, we could do a better job.
Wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, this is really a great session there. This is probably the most well-attended session throughout our forum history here. Yeah, everybody, please join me. Thanks, Sam, Will, and Matt for the presentation today. Cool. Great. Next, we will have Stephanie Pollock and Jamie Tesler, 2 prior Secretary of States, Secretary of Transportation, talk about creating mobility innovation ecosystem. So for those in the audience, have a great weekend. I see you next Friday.